Hello, friends. This is Helena from Front's product education team, reporting from Front's headquarters in San Francisco. And with me today, I have Kenji Hayward, my good friend and our senior director of customer support, with whom I've had the pleasure of working for the past 6 years at Front, pretty much since we both started working here. I've invited him here to chat with our community about how he's built a very successful, very impressive support culture that permeates through our company. And luckily, I got to participate in the beginning part of that era. So, Kenji, to start us off, how about you give us a quick recap of your career and how you've come to be the leader of support at Front?
Happy to. Thanks for having me, Helena. Full circle moment. So, my entire career has only been in customer support. This is the job that I started with, and this is the one I've done for about 12 years now. So my very first support job was at a early stage startup. There was about 8 people. We were in a tiny office above a Mexican restaurant on Mission Street. It's called Revel Systems. They're still around today.
Yeah.
So you may have seen them in your restaurant or coffee shop.
I definitely have.
If you eat at Cinnabons, you've probably seen them. And yeah, I've worked in every support job imaginable. My first job was as a level 1 support, doing phone support, doing on-site installations, router troubleshooting, you name it, I've done it. I worked my way up to being a manager, even though I wasn't ready, but nobody ever is at that early stage. And I worked there for about 4 years, and when I left, I was director of support. I had grown the team from myself to about 200, a little bit more globally, and I then joined a company called Flux. I worked there for a couple of years, and then I joined Front, where I met you.
Yeah. How did you come to Front?
So I got a recommendation from a friend that I met through the support-driven community, which I highly recommend. Her name is Jessie, and so she just so happens to still work at Front, and we got a chance to work together for quite a number of years, but she had recommended Front as a great place to work. I met with Mathilde, the founder, and just fell in love with the company, and she was somebody I immediately wanted to work for.
Yeah, and I remember that we started only 2 weeks apart from each other. I started, and then I was told, hey, our boss is coming in 2 weeks, and that was you. So we got started right around the same time. But unlike you, my job was not wholly in support my whole career. I was actually a teacher before this. So it gave me a lot of skills that I was thankfully able to apply to a lot of the things that we worked on together, and you were always very, very supportive and just really highlighted those skill sets in me and allowed me to showcase them and build on them. So I'm very thankful for that. So when I started, I remember that our team was very small. I was hired support number 2, you were support number 3. We had Evan and Jason, they were engineers who then moved over to the support team. And that was the time that we broke off from the customer experience team and formally created a support team that was now under you. What do you remember from those early days of the support team?
A lot. We're all still here, by the way. Helena's grown into different roles at the company.
And so has Jessie, who's now on my team
Jessie,
with me.
but the 2 folks that we recruited to become Tier 2 folks, they're still here. Corey's still here. And speaking of Corey, I consider her my manager. She ran the support team as the first person.
Yeah. I mean, all the customers assumed she was the manager. Even when you started and you were working and talking to customers, they would be like, hey, let me talk to your manager, Corey. Little did they know Kenji was the boss.
Yes. Still debatable at this point. But in the early days, that was my job. You know, when you're in a small team, there's not a lot to manage. You're really just trying to figure everything out. So I was working in the queue about 90%, 95% of the day of the week. And I remember probably my second week, Corey had some scheduled PTO, and she took off, I think, a week or 2 and left Helena and I to cover the queue and just throw us in the deep end, and it terrified me. But we got through it. We learned a lot. And I think this is where your teaching experience really shined through, was not only did we get through this crazy backlog of the queue and just trying to do our best to stay above water, but you actually took the time to document the gaps that you had. And by the time Corey came back, we had a framework for what our knowledge base is today.
Yeah, I literally just wrote down everything that I learned from a person or just from reading past Front emails and like, oh, this is how you debug this or troubleshoot this. And At that time, all the knowledge lived in people's heads. They were more than happy to help us, but it just takes so much longer to go find somebody who has the answer to tell it to you. So it did actually take me extra time to document this stuff, but then it scaled because then you would ask me a question and I would be like, don't talk to me, Kenji. Go look in the documentation. I just answered that. And that became our team documentation. I think one thing that stands out to me from those early days too is we're here today talking about support culture within the company. What I really loved about starting at Front and just seeing how people viewed the support team was that people really, really highly valued and respected the support team. And of course, that was because Corey built a really great reputation all on her own, being this very knowledgeable, helpful, highly technical person, as well as Evan and Jason. But by the time we came, people really looked to us like to jump on their calls, to help them troubleshoot, to teach them things that they didn't understand. And so we had lots of people that wanted to work with us. And so from there, I think we started to think a little bit more about how do we spread the knowledge that the support team has to more of the company so that we can help our customers more and it's not just siloed to the support team. So Kenji, from that time, what do you recall about starting those early experimentations and conversations about this support culture at Front?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. The earlier that you can start to get support involved into the company culture, it's a lot easier of a transition. And so we got to experiment a lot. And one of our experiments that eventually failed, but I'll tell you why, was that we would have a weekly all hands like most companies do, or at least most tech companies, every Monday morning. And when they ended, we would just ask folks and announce, hey, can anybody just stay along and help us out with the queue? It'd really be great, the busy queue on Monday, and we'll help you through it. And it worked at first. For the first few weeks, maybe 10 folks, probably less, would stay. But week after week, it was less and less. And then it became really awkward to the point where I felt like we were begging for help. So it wasn't a good feeling. So there was something wrong there. We weren't doing it right.
Right. The idea was there. The intention was there. But I think the execution was not aligned with the outcome that we wanted. It didn't work out very well. And then it was a couple months later, in 2018, we had a lunch and learn, which was a monthly thing that the company did, was invite a speaker in during our lunch and talk to us. We actually got to hear from Alfred Lin, who was the CFO and COO of Zappos previously. By the time he came to do our talk, he was a partner at Sequoia. But he talked a lot about his experience at Zappos, and that really inspired me because he talked about how customer-centric Zappos is and how every single employee does a rotation in customer service. So they got to talk directly to the customers and learn how the team worked. And so I was like, this is so cool. We have to do something like that. Do you remember that?
I do. It's one of my first support books that I had ever read was Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. And to hear it in person from Alfred Lin, and he had told us, even for him, he did it, doesn't matter if you're a CFO, a CEO, a sales rep, an SDR, someone in marketing, everyone at Zappos had to spend some time in support. And I remember right after that, first I wanted to shake his hand and meet him, but then after that, you and I had just gotten into a room, we have to do this. And we just kind of went for it.
Yeah, and I think you went on to talk to Matilda about this, right? And that's how we formally started to get the ball rolling.
Right, and then we found out that it wasn't just us, so there were other functions at Front asking the same thing of how do we get support in front of more folks and create a program around this. So that really validated that we were onto something.
Yeah. I think so many leaders across the company started to see how valuable it is for their teams to participate in support. Customer facing, it benefits the customers, it helps them with product understanding and knowledge. And so when we started our program, that was what we based it on. So we called it Support You, the letter U. We thought it was so clever because it was like, hey, I'm supporting you. But then also Support You stood for Support University. So this became a formal company-wide onboarding program. It had two goals. One was to give everyone standardized product training, which didn't exist before. You just picked up whatever you did from your manager or your team, whoever was onboarding you. So everybody had different levels of knowledge about the product. And then also goal number 2 was to bring everyone into the support fold and actually provide real customer support to our customers. So that we felt would build empathy and it would keep us close to what we were doing and just give more meaning to our work, especially in a more removed from customer role like recruiting. They don't talk to our customers at all, really. And so that kind of brings them closer to the business and why we do what we do. And actually, our first Support You grad was from recruiting team. So, hi, Karina. So then, in order to execute on these goals, we came up with this format of Support You, which was, one, there were these LMS courses, learning management system courses. They were online. They included things like a scavenger hunt course and training videos and different exercises to help you test your knowledge of the product. And then we had a series of live trainings with other managers, subject matter experts. We're an email client, so we had a session about email. Most people don't actually understand how email works. And when I joined the company, I was like, I have no idea what the behind the scenes of what we're doing is. And so we gave this email 101 course. And then also live sessions with the support team to do training, understand how support works, and then just the basics of how we support our customers. And then the last component was the new employees would answer real customer questions with a lot of support, but it was like a small little group of us, and then we would talk through questions and how we would approach them. And then each of them would actually work on their own case and then draft their responses, and then we'd check it, and then they'd send it out. So that was such a fun time for me to start that and to see the effects of it. What was your favorite out of that?
Oh my gosh. Hands down, the graduation ceremony.
Yeah, the graduation.
It's my favorite part. It's a chance where you get to really celebrate someone's achievement for not only helping support, but helping a customer and improving their knowledge of the product. The learning that we had from our early experiments for that, you can't make it about the support team. Like, as much as it is inherently about the support team, it's going to help you in the long run. The better educated folks are about working with support, that's only going to be a better experience. But you really have to make it about the person and the customer, really making it something to celebrate. So what we would do is we would literally in person go work at a cafe next door, which was the Pinterest building.
We didn't have our own coffee shop, but Pinterest did, so we used it all the time.
We did, and it was great. So we would go there, we would work on tickets with customers together live, and it was just such a fun session for me to do that. I got to meet every new hire at front that went through the program at the time. And then while this is all happening, I am messaging Helena or somebody else on the support team to rally the troops, get as many frontiers, is what we call our employees here, as you can in the lobby, so that when I come up with the graduating class, we can make a big deal.
Huge party.
Music is blasting. All the great hits are playing while we're clapping and celebrating. And then we immediately take them to a photo booth. We take their picture with props. It's just a great, how can you not love that? So that would make me really just appreciate my job and doing that. Once a week was like the thing I looked forward to the most.
Yes. And I think that was such a good moment for the company culturally, because every week we would have this little celebration.
You see it.
Yeah, you see it in front of you, you feel the energy, and you see just so much joy, and it's things that we as adults just don't really do anymore. Everyone gets excited. You get to see your teammate come up and they're super proud of what they've done, and you pump them up, and they feel really proud that they've been able to do this in their first 1 and 2 weeks of being on the job for a product that's pretty technical. Supporting front is actually quite technical.
It really is.
Yeah. Our support tier 1 is like a tier 2 at most other companies.
Anywhere else.
Yeah. So it's pretty impressive that they were able to do this in their first weeks. So we had our Support You program running. It was pretty much an in-person program because everybody was flown out. If you weren't part of the San Francisco office, you were flown into San Francisco. And then we were part of their onboarding with Support You. And then we started to implement support power hours at offsites as well. I think people got more excited about it. Was similar to what we did at All Hands in the past, but this time around, because we had the Support You program in place, people actually understood what we were doing, and the grads that already graduated came back. And so the word had spread, and that this was fun, this is a cool activity. So we started to get more people doing this with us at our offsites, and it became one of our key activities that we would do at offsites. But then the pandemic hit. Yes. So in 2020, we all went home. We didn't come out of our houses for many years. And then at that time, I even remember that when we were sent home that first week, we had somebody that had just started on the support team. And I was actively onboarding her during that time. And then people were like, oh, go home for now, come back tomorrow. And then we just never came back. So what happened to the support team, Kenji, when COVID hit?
Well, we all went home. I went to Japan, and I learned that I could grow a beard, which was a new experience for me. I don't have it today.
I love love that for you.
Yeah, it was good for the time. And yeah, we had to learn really quickly how to adapt. But I think out of all of the different teams, support teams are probably the best set up to work remotely. It's just in our nature. We were doing it a little bit here and there. If there was a power outage or some reason we needed to work, it didn't stop us from working from home.
Well, and also we used Front, which is built for collaborating.
So that was that was the big, like, now, okay, we can really push Front to the limits now. We're going to collaborate. We're not going to be anywhere near each other. And what happened was we did our job better than we ever could. But for other teams, it is a lot harder. So I think the learning curve of going remote and doing a program for us was pretty difficult. The pandemic had economic effects, and we just had to deprioritize programs like Support You.
Yeah.
And we had layoffs. Everyone struggled. And it just fell to the wayside because our main priority was going back to our early days of we just got to get through the queue. So there's just no bandwidth, no time for either of us to think about creating these programs for the company.
Specifically for me and our support team, we relied on in-person onboarding for support team.
Right.
It was all in-person training. And so my focus shifted to how do we build an online remote onboarding for all support teams for such a technical product where so much of the learning happened during these shadow sessions where the person that you're shadowing literally pulled up the screens and showed you what was going on and explained these things to you. So we had to turn all of our training sessions into remote sessions and all the shadowing sessions and reformat everything. So we just didn't have the resources to focus on also turning Support You into a remote experience. And so I think for 2-3 years, we just didn't have Support You. Yeah. The online LMS courses continued to run, but those were decreased in their power because we took away the support aspect of it. I personally could see the difference because during the pandemic, without our support sessions, people's questions that they would ask the support team really showcased the gaps in knowledge that weren't there before, because a lot of this basic support stuff that we would tell them allowed them to learn so much more about the product, and now they didn't know this stuff. So now let's fast forward a little bit. We're getting through the pandemic. We're normalizing our way of working remotely. And so, Kenji, how did you restart this conversation about bringing support back into the company culture and making it more a value and highlight of the company? And I'm asking you this now because I, at this point, have left to start the education team at Front. And so I'm not as close to this anymore. So tell me what happened from then.
Yeah, but I want to give you a ton of credit for building the foundation. I would say, 75, 80% of the foundation that you've built, we still use today.
Thank you.
So big credit to you.
Thank you.
I think the pandemic also stopped us from meeting in person as a company. That was an annual thing. We would do annual musicals. We would meet annually at a different offsite location every single year, and we had to pause that, obviously, for probably about 2 or 3 years. And so we finally had an offsite coming up, and this was last year in 2023, and it was our first time meeting. For some folks on my team, I've never met them, so it was a big deal.
That's wild.
The people team was planning, you want to plan different events for all the different teams, and they'd come to me and said, do you have anything you want to do with support or for support with the company? And I wanted to bring back these sessions that we did way back when, which were the in-person support sessions. But this time we wanted to take all the learnings that we had along the way. So I knew we needed to make it something that we couldn't just beg people to do or force people to do. But we got a little creative. So what we actually did was during the offsite, we had these pins that you can earn based on little activities that you would do throughout the different offsites. So one of the activities was to work with support. We also strategically placed our booth right in front of the entrance, so you couldn't miss us.
Next to all the pastries.
Next to all the pastries, yeah. So if you didn't see us the first time, you would see us on the way to try to get breakfast. So a little bit of the guilt there.
Yes. Well, and you also looked like the check-in table. So people were like, oh, we're here to check in. And you're like, this is not a check-in table, but let me tell you what this is.
They were really disappointed. But quickly, as soon as we started getting a few people into it, especially the ones who had never been to San Francisco, it was just a great way to meet people. So I would do this kind of speed dating format where I would have different support folks at different tables, and I'd go, hey, you sit here. Oh, you're in engineering? Go sit with Haley. You're in marketing? Go sit with Sadie. And then we just got a really big crowd going, and I think it's just this effect where You start seeing the buzz.
Yeah, literally, I just remember the hum in that
Yeah.
room. Like, people were talking and engaging at tables and talking through the cases and being like, I didn't know you could see this in our system. I didn't know we could do that. It was excitement. It was fun. And people got to bond over a support case together.
I think we forgot how valuable it was.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was walking by one of the tables that I placed an engineer at with Haley, they were talking about some of the pain points they were going through. This
Yeah.
is Laurent, by the way, our CTO.
Yes.
Was going through
One of the engineers.
just one of the engineers, just the founding
The founder
CTO.
up front, yeah.
Fix things the next day.
Oh, because he saw. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's a true
amazing.
story. It never would have happened if they didn't have
wow.
that in-person encounter. So I think that it was just very much needed. And what really was the icing on the cake was after we all went home and we're done with the offsite, we do this exit survey. And essentially, we got feedback that everyone loved the support program. We called it Hop in the Support Queue. And everyone loved it, and they wanted more. So that was our signal. It's time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that working together across the different teams just reminded me so much of when I had first started, and there were so many things I didn't know in those, early days and weeks and months, and just reaching out to an engineer, kind of like timidly, be like, oh, I don't understand this. They would maybe say something very technical, and all of a sudden they would just show up. This was, for example, Jeremy. He's employee number 1 up front. And he would just show up next to me in the early days, next to my desk, and pull up a chair and just explain all these things to me. And so having those support sessions again, starting last year, it really felt like we had restarted that culture of embedding support and just working support into more places of the company and having people really bond over support. So, okay, we got Hop in the support queue.
Yep.
And then you ended up turning it remote, right?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, it was a lot easier than the first time because we had built this, again, foundation. A lot of credit to you. We now knew how to work remotely. We learned that part. So that wasn't a blocker anymore.
Yeah.
So we just combined the two, the best of the two worlds. We know that working together is valuable. We know that you can't scale that. It can happen at offsites. Most of the world is remote in some aspect. We've got teams in EMEA, in LATAM, in APAC. And so we just took the same approach to remote onboarding. So you schedule time. You need to make time. That's my number one tip is you can't do a volunteer, here's this one session, kind of like the begging people to come buy your pastries and eat it. You have to intentionally set time of, I'm booking this time for these people, and this is when we're going to host it. Yeah. And creating these Zoom links and creating the different invites.
No drop-ins, no optional,
drop-ins.
like, this is a meeting for us, and you're going to show up.
Yeah, and so the way that we made this successful was our first session, we strategically chose product leaders, leaders from a mix of different teams, because if we can get the leaders to buy in
and see
the value, then they would be our biggest champions.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened. So we got the great feedback from the head of design, shout out to Maggie, the head of product, and a lot of different folks. And they were the ones saying, we need this for our team. Every product manager has to go through this. We are a support product. There's no reason they shouldn't.
Yep.
And so once we had that, and we got the CEO to do it. And so after we'd done that, it was a lot easier to roll it out. We had the foundation of, here's how you do remotely. Here's how you set up the invites. We've got the buy-in. And so what I would recommend, what we did was at our company all hands, so whatever version of that is for you, share the results. There's nothing more powerful than the story of actual feedback. Like not the data points of the percentage of people who attended. Read the quotes, like from the people who attended. Maggie, in her case, every PM needs to take this. Yeah. That's very powerful. Yeah. So once we shared that out, I got the green light to, okay, go build this for the rest of the company. And Phoebe and I from the support team and all of the support. It takes the entire team, by the way.
Because pretty much everyone has to be part of it in order for it to scale, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's just, back in the day when it was 3 of us or 5 of us, it had to be one. Maybe it was Helena doing everything back then. But now when you're at a company of hundreds, it literally takes the entire village to do it. So if you're going to pull off a successful support program to work in the queue or go on calls with customers, you got to get buy-in from the entire team. You got to get buy-in from leadership. But it's not as difficult as you think. It's literally start somewhere, whether it's an offsite or you can start how we did, start pandering and getting some folks. Don't do that. But I think just getting your foot in the door and showing people the value of, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is helpful. Yeah. That's how you get the ball rolling.
Yeah. And I know that also another aspect of this is that you really celebrate the support teammates who host these sessions, because it's not part of their regular job. It's something new that we started, and we have this thing that we call queue guilt, where if you're not working in a queue, which is always growing and it never really goes away, you feel like you're not pulling your weight for the team. And so when you take an hour and a half away to go do something like this,
exactly. Yeah, you have to celebrate your team the same way that we were celebrating the new hires who were graduating. So every time somebody hosts their first session, we make a big deal about it. They'll post, hey, I just completed my session, and we'll chime in on Slack. Yeah, that's something I always want to highlight and celebrate, because it's a full win. It's very rare that you get a program that can actually benefit everybody. But if you think about it, the support team wins, we get more face time with the rest of the org. It takes a little more time to work on. It'd probably be faster if we did the cases ourselves, but this helps to create more champions across the company.
Sure.
For everyone who does it, they're just going to be better at their role. And then for the customers, they just get to interact with different folks from the company.
Yeah, and I think for the people that work to roll this out, which I know this became like an official OKR to roll this out to company, right?
Yeah.
And so like for the teammates on support that now get to work on this with you, for example, Phoebe, I know she had a big part in rolling this out. She got to do this really cool, fun project that was very visible, and it helps to grow her career, and it seems like she's really interested in it, and it's something that she's very good at. So it also opens up new pathways of growth for the support team to bring in programs like this. So, okay, what do you see then looking forward? Now we have the program fully built into the company's onboarding. Everybody's going to go through this. What do you see for the future of Front support culture?
We're just going to keep scaling it. So today, every new hire at Front works with the support team and works with customers by answering customer questions in the support queue. And so my goal would be long-term, not just new hires, but everybody at Front, because we missed a lot of people during the pandemic.
Right.
A lot of people are still here. That's my long-term goal, is everybody at Front does this program at some point. But just to continue to scale, we just opened up a new LATAM hub for our companies, so making sure we can do more localized trainings.
Yep.
Also, a big shout out to Luke Atkins, who does run and host our local Hop into Support Queue sessions for the Paris office.
Oh, okay. So those are local in person.
So when possible, we can do it if there's enough folks who can do it in person, we'll do it in person.
Oh,
so there is that option. So
that is cool.
You just got to be flexible. Yeah, we're
coming now to the present time. We've learned a lot of things from you in this conversation, Kenji. Thank you so much for being here. To close us out, tell us what have been your biggest learnings and takeaways, and also what are you most proud of that you've built in the support culture at Front?
Yeah, if I could do it all over again, I would start at the top. So what I mean by that is, whether you're a 3-person company or a 300-person or 3,000-person company, find the stakeholders and get them invested in it first. That's going to make it a lot smoother of a ride. I think what we went through early on was going upstream and feeling that friction of really trying to validate what we were doing. And so when you make it less about you and connect it more to the value the entire company is going to get, that's my best advice. That's what I would do if I could do it over again. We made a lot of mistakes, so this is good for anyone listening to not do. It took us 6 years. I bet if we did it over again, we could do it in 6 months.
And what I thought was very smart was, we have a new-ish CEO who joined us this year.
Right.
You got him in this session like during his first week of onboarding, and he got to experience this, and he was like, whoa, this is really good.
I mean, what a great introduction to the support team. And so as soon as he started, he did an open Q&A, and I believe Corey actually from my team had asked, have you worked in the support queue yet? And he said, no, I'd love to. And so then I reached out to him. And to his credit, he said, schedule me in the next 2 weeks. And he was a man of his word, and he did it.
And I remember at one of the all hands shortly after that, he talked about it and sang its praises.
Yeah, so you have to walk the walk, and so a huge credit to Dan for doing that.
Okay, so Kenji, thank you so much for joining today. Is there anything else you'd want to share?
No, just, I'm so proud of all the work you've done, our team's done. I think the thing I'm most proud of is that it's going to scale. You and I will continue to grow here at Front. We might do different roles, we might do different things, but I really believe we've got the program to a point where it's just embedded in the culture. Phoebe and others are going to take it on. So it's like a legacy we're leaving. And so we've truly embedded this into our company's culture, and I think that's the thing I'm the most proud of.
Good. Good job, Kenji.
Good job, Helena.
Good job to
We
us
did it.
both. All right. Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much, Kenji, for taking time out of your day to chat with me. We will be back soon, I hope. Bye.